The Black Swan, The Impact of the Highly Improbable, by Nassim Nicholas Taleb. Introduction. Imagine a turkey. Every single morning for 1,000 days, a friendly man comes to feed this turkey. The turkey, being a creature of experience, starts to build a belief system. It observes a pattern. Every day, the man arrives, the food appears, and life is good. Each new feeding strengthens the turkey's confidence. It starts to believe, with unshakable certainty, that the man's daily visit is a universal law of life, put in place for its own well-being. The turkey's confidence is at its absolute peak on the afternoon of the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. And then, something unexpected happens. The man arrives, but this time, he isn't carrying food. The turkey is about to have its belief system revised in the most dramatic way possible. This simple, almost brutal story is the key to understanding one of the most important books of the 21st century, The Black Swan, by Nassim Nicholas Taleb. This isn't just a book, it's a way of seeing the world. It's a work that challenges everything you think you know about knowledge, prediction, and success. Published just before the 2008 financial crisis, it became a prophetic text, a lens through which the world suddenly made a terrifying kind of sense. It sold millions of copies and introduced the term Black Swan into our global vocabulary, a term we now use to describe the massive, unpredictable events that shape our world. The author, Nassim Taleb, is not your typical academic. He is a rare breed, a former Wall Street trader who became a world-renowned philosopher of randomness. He's a man who didn't just theorize about risk, he lived it, breathed it, and made his career by betting against the very kind of blindness that affects our turkey. Today, we are going to journey into the heart of his powerful idea. We're going to explore why we are all, in some way, like that turkey, confident in a world we don't fully understand. And I promise you, by the end of our time together, you will understand a fundamental flaw in how the human mind operates. You will see why the most important events in your life, and in history, are the ones you will never see coming. And more importantly, you will learn the first steps toward building a life that isn't just prepared for uncertainty, but can actually become stronger from it. Let's begin. Book summary. To understand The Black Swan, you have to understand the world where Nassim Taleb came from. He grew up in Lebanon, during a time of peace and prosperity. For over 1,000 years, his homeland had been a place of remarkable coexistence, a mosaic of different cultures and religions living side by side. People there believed their society was stable, a permanent paradise. They had 1,000 days, and more, of evidence to prove it. And then, in 1975, a brutal civil war erupted. Overnight, the paradise vanished. Everything that was believed to be permanent was shattered. This experience, of watching a stable world suddenly and violently disintegrate, became the defining lesson of Taleb's life. He saw firsthand that history doesn't crawl, it jumps. It moves from one fracture to another, with long periods of quiet in between. The most important events are not the ones you see in the daily news, they are the sudden, shocking, and world-changing surprises. This led him to his central idea. A black swan is an event with 3 specific traits. First, it's an outlier. It's something that lies outside the realm of regular expectations. Nothing in the past can convincingly point to its possibility. Second, it carries an extreme impact. Think of the invention of the Internet, the September 11th attacks, or a massive financial crash. These aren't small ripples, they are tidal waves that change everything. And third, in spite of its outlier status, human nature makes us concoct explanations for it after the fact. We look back and create a story that makes the event seem explainable and predictable. We tell ourselves, "Oh, we should have seen it coming." This is the retrospective illusion. Rarity, extreme impact, and retrospective predictability. This is the triplet that defines a black swan. And Taleb's argument is that almost everything of significance in our world is the result of these black swans, from the success of ideas and religions, to the dynamics of history, to the major turning points in our own personal lives. Think about your own existence. How did you choose your career? How did you meet the most important people in your life? Did it happen according to a neat, predictable plan? Or was it the result of a chance encounter, an unexpected opportunity, a sudden change of heart? The problem is, we are blind to black swans. We spend our lives focusing on the small, the predictable, the repeatable. We are like the turkey, gathering more and more evidence that the world is a safe and steady place, all while the butcher is sharpening his axe. To explain this blindness, Taleb divides the world into two very different domains, two imaginary countries he calls Mediocristan and Extremistan. Mediocristan is the province of the average, the predictable, and the mundane. Think of physical human traits like height or weight. If you gather 1,000 people in a stadium and then add the heaviest person on the planet to the group, his weight will barely change the average. It's significant, but not game-changing. In Mediocristan, when your sample is large, no single instance will dramatically alter the total. The exceptions are rare and their impact is small. This is the world described by the familiar bell curve, where most things cluster around the average. But we don't always live in Mediocristan. More and more, our world is governed by the laws of another country, Extremistan. Extremistan is the province of the scalable, the unequal, and the wildly unpredictable. Think of wealth, book sales, or social media followers. If you gather 1,000 people in a stadium and then Bill Gates walks in, he doesn't just change the average wealth, he becomes the average. His net worth is so vast that the wealth of everyone else becomes a rounding error. In Extremistan, one single observation can have a disproportionate, explosive impact on the total. Professions like a dentist or a baker live in Mediocristan. Their income is limited by the hours in the day and the number of clients they can physically see. They can't add zeros to their income without adding more work. But a writer, a musician, or a tech entrepreneur lives in Extremistan. J.K. Rowling doesn't have to write a new Harry Potter book every time someone wants to read it. The work is done once, but the rewards are scalable, potentially infinite. This creates a winner-take-all environment. A few giants dominate, while thousands of others, who may be almost as talented, are left with almost nothing. And here's the crucial part. Black swans live in Extremistan. It is the land of rare, high-impact events. And our blindness comes from the fact that we use the mental maps of Mediocristan to navigate the territory of Extremistan. We expect the world to be fair and predictable, when in reality, it is often governed by wild, scalable randomness. So why are our minds so prone to this error? Taleb identifies a few deep-seated mental biases, the villains of his story, that are responsible for our black swan blindness. The first, and perhaps most powerful, is the narrative fallacy. Our brains are story processing machines. We are wired to see the world not as a series of random facts, but as a coherent story with cause and effect. Stories help us make sense of the world, to compress complex information into a simple, memorable package. The novelist E.M. Forster once showed the power of narrative with a simple example. Compare these two sentences. The king died, and then the queen died. This is a sequence of information. Now consider this one. The king died, and then the queen died of grief. This is a story. The second version is much easier to remember, much more emotionally resonant, because we've added a causal link. We've imposed a because. The problem is that this storytelling impulse is so strong that we see causes where there are none. We look at a successful entrepreneur and say, she succeeded because she was courageous and took risks. We look at a stock market crash and the news immediately provides a reason. The capture of a dictator, a change in interest rates, whatever fits the moment. Taleb tells a hilarious story about this. The day Saddam Hussein was captured, Bloomberg News flashed a headline, U.S. Treasuries rise, Hussein capture may not curb terrorism. A half hour later, when Treasury bonds fell, a new headline appeared, U.S. Treasuries fall, Hussein capture boosts allure of risky assets. The exact same event was used to explain a market move and its complete opposite. This is the narrative fallacy at work. We crave explanations, and our minds will grab the most convenient story and hold on to it as truth. This makes the past seem far more orderly and predictable than it actually was. When we look back at a black swan, like a war or a market crash, we construct a narrative that makes it seem inevitable. We forget the feeling of uncertainty, the infinite number of other paths that could have been taken. The story smooths out the jagged edges of reality. And this illusion of understanding the past gives us a false confidence in our ability to predict the future. This leads us to the second villain, the confirmation bias. This is our natural tendency to look for evidence that confirms our existing beliefs, and to ignore evidence that contradicts them. If you believe that all swans are white, you'll spend your time looking for more white swans. Every white swan you see will strengthen your belief. But this confirmatory evidence is fragile. It takes only one single black swan to shatter a theory built on 1 million white swan sightings. Taleb argues that knowledge grows not from verification, but from falsification. We get closer to the truth not by proving ourselves right, but by actively trying to prove ourselves wrong. This is an idea he borrows from the philosopher Karl Popper. The most powerful piece of information is the disconfirming instance, the black swan. A great speculator like George Soros, Taleb notes, doesn't look for reasons to support his bets, he actively searches for reasons why his theory might be wrong. This is true intellectual courage, the ability to look at the world without needing it to stroke your ego. But most of us do the opposite. We collect evidence like a child collects stamps, looking only for the ones that fit our collection. This is why it's so hard to change our minds, and why we become trapped in our own narratives. The third, and perhaps most subtle villain, is what Taleb calls the ludic fallacy. Ludic comes from the Latin word for game. The ludic fallacy is the mistake of applying the clean, sterile randomness of games and casinos to the messy, wild randomness of real life. To illustrate this, Taleb introduces two characters, Drive. John and Fat Tony. Drive. John is a brilliant, highly educated engineer. He's precise, logical, and thinks entirely inside the box. Fat Tony is a street-smart guy from Brooklyn. He's not book-smart, but he has an intuitive grasp of how the real world works. You pose a question to them. I flip a fair coin 99 times and it comes up heads every single time. What are the odds of getting tails on the next toss? Drive. John, the nerd, immediately answers, 50%, of course. Each flip is an independent event, he's answering from within the rules of the game he was given. Fat Tony, on the other hand, scoffs. I'd say no more than 1%, he says. The coin's gotta be loaded. It's not a fair game. Who is right? In a textbook, Drive. John is right. But in the real world, Fat Tony is the one who will survive. He instinctively knows that the real risk isn't in the game itself, but in the assumptions about the game. He questions the premise. He knows that in real life, the dice are almost always loaded. The ludic fallacy is the blindness of Drive. John. It's the belief that the risks we can measure and model in a casino are the same as the risks we face in life. In a casino, the rules are fixed. The probabilities are known. The sources of uncertainty are defined. But in the real world, the rules can change without warning. The probabilities are unknown. And the most dangerous risks are the ones that nobody has even thought to model. This is the mistake made by the big financial firms who built complex mathematical models to manage their risk. Their models were beautiful, elegant, and based on the nice, clean math of the bell curve. But they were models for a world in Mediocristan. And when the Black Swan of 2008 arrived, an event their models had said was impossible, their entire system collapsed. They were playing with the wrong dice. The final villain in our story of blindness is the problem of silent evidence. This is perhaps the most profound of all. The Roman philosopher Cicero told a story of a man who was shown a painting of sailors who had survived a shipwreck after praying to the gods. The man was told this was proof of the gods' power. His response was simple: "Where are the pictures of those who prayed, and then drowned?" The drowned sailors cannot tell their story. The failures do not write memoirs. The dead do not give interviews. This is the problem of silent evidence. History is written by the winners. What we see is not the full picture. We see the successes, the survivors, the lucky ones. The vast cemetery of failures remains invisible. Think of all the books on how to become a millionaire. They study the habits of successful people, courage, risk-taking, optimism, and conclude that these traits are the cause of success. But what if you went to the graveyard of failed entrepreneurs? You would find it filled with people who also had courage, took risks, and were optimistic. The difference between the winners and the losers isn't just skill, it's a massive dose of luck. But we don't see the luck, because the unlucky are silent. Taleb uses another beautiful example: the swimmer's body. We see elite swimmers with their long, elegant muscles and think that swimming creates that body type. But we're getting the causality backward. It's more likely that people with a natural predisposition for that body type become successful swimmers. We don't see the thousands of people who swam for years and never developed that physique. We only see the survivors. This bias makes the world seem far less random and far more stable than it actually is. We see the companies that survive for decades and call them resilient, forgetting the thousands that went bust. We see the person who recovered from a terrible disease and call it a miracle, forgetting the many who did not. The silent evidence of the cemetery hides the true nature of risk from us. So, we are trapped. Our minds create comforting stories. We seek evidence to confirm them. We mistake the clean world of games for the messy real world, and we are blind to the evidence of all the failures that surround us. We are built to be suckers for the Black Swan. The question then becomes, if we cannot predict these events, what on earth can we do? This is where Taleb's work moves from diagnosis to prescription. His answer is simple, yet revolutionary. You don't need to predict the Black Swan to survive it, or even to benefit from it. His core strategy is what he calls the barbell. Imagine a barbell at the gym. It has weights on both ends, and nothing in the middle. Taleb says we should approach our lives and our investments in the same way. Instead of putting all our resources in medium-risk ventures, how do you even know what's medium risk? We should be hyper-conservative on one end, and hyper-aggressive on the other. What does this mean in practice? It means putting, say, 85 to 90% of your assets in the safest possible instruments you can find, things that cannot be hurt by a black swan. Think of it as your survival fund. It's the part of your life that is protected, that gives you stability. Then, you take the remaining 10 to 15% and put it into extremely speculative, high-risk, high-payoff ventures. These are your bets on positive black swans. These are the small investments in startups, the time spent on a creative project, the decision to go to a party where you might meet someone who changes your life. With this strategy, you are robust to negative black swans. The worst that can happen is you lose your small, speculative pot of money. Your survival is never at risk. But you are wide open to the upside of positive black swans. If one of your speculative bets pays off, it can pay off enormously, changing your life in ways you could never have predicted. This isn't just about money. It's a philosophy for life. Be hyper-conservative in the things that can hurt you, so you can be hyper-aggressive in the things that can help you. Protect your downside, and let the upside take care of itself. This requires a radical shift in mindset. It means learning to distinguish between positive Black Swan businesses and negative Black Swan businesses. A negative Black Swan business is one where the surprises are almost always bad. Banking is a classic example. A banker who lends money, in the best-case scenario, gets his money back with interest. But in the worst-case scenario, a Black Swan event, he can lose everything. The upside is small and capped, the downside is huge and unpredictable. A positive Black Swan business is the opposite. Think of venture capital, publishing, or scientific research. You make many small bets, most of which will fail. You lose a little bit of money, again and again. But you are waiting for that one positive surprise, the one startup that becomes the next Google, the one book that becomes a global bestseller. The downside is small and controlled, the upside is massive and scalable. Taleb's advice is to structure your life so you have as much exposure as possible to the positive Black Swans. This means embracing what he calls stochastic tinkering, a fancy term for trial and error. It means trying many things, experimenting, being open to accidents and serendipity. He tells the story of Apelles, the ancient Greek painter who was trying to paint the foam on a horse's mouth. He tried again and again, but he couldn't get it right. In a fit of frustration, he threw his sponge at the canvas. And where the sponge hit, it created the perfect, accidental image of the foam. This is the power of serendipity. The greatest discoveries, the most important inventions, were often accidents. They were found by people who were looking for something else, but were prepared to recognize an opportunity when it stumbled into their path. Louis Pasteur famously said, "Chance favors the prepared mind." Taleb's version is, expose yourself to as much chance as possible. Go to parties. Talk to strangers. Read books on subjects you know nothing about. Collect as many free lottery tickets with open-ended payoffs as you can. You don't need to know where you're going to get there. In fact, having a rigid, narrow-minded plan can make you blind to the opportunities that lie just off the beaten path. This brings us to the final, and perhaps most profound, lesson of the Black Swan. The goal is not prediction, it is robustness. We cannot stop Black Swans from happening. The world will always be wild, unpredictable, and full of surprises. The goal is to build systems, and to build a life that is not dependent on our ability to predict the future. A robust system is one that can withstand shocks, that can survive the unexpected. A fragile system is one that looks stable and efficient, but shatters at the first sign of trouble. Our modern world, with its interconnected global economy and massive, too-big-to-fail institutions, has become dangerously fragile. We have sacrificed robustness for a superficial kind of optimization. Taleb warns us to be wary of this manufactured stability. Preventing small forest fires only leads to a massive, uncontrollable one later on. Trying to smooth out every little bump in the economy only sets the stage for a devastating crash. The wisdom of the Black Swan is to accept and even embrace volatility on a small scale, in order to protect ourselves from catastrophic ruin. Commentary. So, what do we take away from all this? For me, the most powerful and liberating idea in the Black Swan is that it's okay not to know. In a world that rewards the appearance of certainty, that celebrates the confident expert with his precise forecasts, Taleb gives us permission to say, "I don't know." He teaches us that this admission of ignorance is not a weakness, it is the highest form of wisdom. It is the starting point for building a truly robust and resilient life. This book is not a manual for predicting the future. It is a manual for how to act in a world you don't understand. And its lessons are not just for traders or economists, they're for anyone who wants to navigate the uncertainties of life with more wisdom, courage, and grace. So how can you start applying these ideas today? Here are a few simple, practical actions. First, start building your own anti-library. This is an idea Taleb borrows from the writer Umberto Eco, who had a personal library of 30,000 books. The most valuable books in his library were the ones he hadn't read yet. Your anti-library is a physical reminder of all the things you don't know. So go buy a book on a subject that intimidates you, a topic you know nothing about. Put it on your shelf. Let it be a symbol of your intellectual humility, a testament to your curiosity, and an invitation to keep learning. Second, apply the barbell strategy to one small area of your life. You don't have to change everything overnight. Just pick one thing. Maybe it's your learning. Spend 90% of your time on your required studies, the safe path. But dedicate 10% of your time to something wild, something speculative. Start a YouTube channel, learn to code a weird app, write poetry, join a strange club. Do something that has no predictable payoff, but has the small, thrilling possibility of a positive surprise. See what happens. And third, practice what's known as via negativa, the path of subtraction. Instead of asking what you can add to your life to make it better, ask what you can remove to make it more robust. What fragile dependencies can you cut out? Maybe it's the constant chatter of the 24-hour news cycle. Maybe it's the need for approval from people whose opinions don't really matter. Maybe it's a financial habit that makes you vulnerable to a single source of income. Robustness is often achieved by removing, not by adding. In the end, Taleb's greatest reminder is a metaphysical one. He urges us to remember that our very existence is a black swan. The odds of any one of us being born, on this planet, at this moment in time, are so infinitesimally small as to be a statistical miracle. We are the survivors of an impossible lottery. When you truly grasp this, the small irritations of daily life, the bad meal, the cold coffee, the missed train, begin to fade into irrelevance. You stop sweating the small stuff, because you realize that just being alive is an extraordinary piece of good luck. You are a black swan. And that simple, powerful truth can set you free. That was our journey through The Black Swan by Nassim Nicholas Taleb. We've touched on the major themes today, but I'll be honest with you, a summary can only guide you to the edge of the water. The real experience comes when you dive in yourself. The magic of this book is in the way Taleb's mind works, his stories, his irreverence, his deep connection to history and philosophy. This summary is designed to help you decide if this book is worth your time. If anything we've talked about today has sparked a flicker of curiosity in you, I urge you to grab a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning a new set of ideas, it's an experience that can fundamentally change the way you see the world, and your place in it. A link to the book is in the description below. Also, if you found this summary valuable and want to continue exploring the great books that have shaped our world, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It lets me know that these conversations matter, and it ensures you won't miss our next journey into another life-changing book. Let's keep growing together.